People used to cross the street when they passed number 19 Hollow Street. Not because it was haunted, not exactly, but because it looked like a place the world had given up on. The windows were blackened with grime. The mailbox overflowed with yellowed letters. The yard was a graveyard of forgotten furniture, rotting wood, and things no one wanted anymore. But someone lived there. A man, Mr. Lyle. He was old, maybe 70, maybe 90. No one really knew. He wore the same dusty coat every day, spoke to no one, and when people knocked, he never answered. Most assumed he was just another recluse, a hermit, a man who didn't care. But behind those decaying walls was a story no one ever heard. A story about loss, loneliness, and how sometimes the weight of life doesn't crush you all at once. It piles up slowly until you can't see your way out. Mr. Lyle wasn't always like this. He was once a professor of literature. Brilliant, charismatic, the kind of man who made Shakespeare feel like poetry instead of homework. He had a wife, a daughter, a home filled with books and laughter. But grief is a strange thing. When his wife died suddenly in a car accident, Lyle changed. When his daughter moved abroad and stopped calling, he changed again. The world kept moving, but he stopped. He didn't clean anymore, didn't throw things away. At first, it was small, a newspaper here, an unopened letter there. But over the years, the piles grew. Old newspapers covered the floors, rotting food in the sink, stacks of broken clocks, moldy books, rusted cans, torn coats, anything and everything. Because to Lyle, nothing was trash. Every object meant something. A memory. A day he was still needed. A piece of a life that used to be full. People called him a hoarder. But Diogenes Syndrome is more than that. It's not just about mess. It's about extreme self-neglect, social withdrawal, and emotional collapse. Those with it often live in filth, not because they want to, but because somewhere inside, they've lost the ability to care. They've lost the sense of deserving better. They've buried their hurt beneath layers of things they can't throw away. One day, a neighbor named Ava, a social worker in her 30s, was assigned to check in on Lyle. When she knocked, he didn't answer, so she came back. Again and again, weeks passed. And one morning, the door creaked open. The smell hit her first, then the silence, then the sight of him thin, pale, sitting in a nest of newspapers and cans, staring at a broken clock that hadn't worked in years. He didn't speak, but he didn't turn her away either. Ava didn't judge. She didn't flinch. She sat beside him and said, "Hi, Mr. Lyle. I'm Ava. Mind if I sit for a while?" Over time, she learned to speak his language, books, music, memory. She asked him about poetry. He quoted Rilke. She asked about his wife. He fell silent, then whispered, "She made the best lemon cake." He began to let her throw away one thing at a time. An old can, a cracked plate, a moldy box of matches. Each item tossed was like peeling off a layer of armor. Hard, painful, but freeing. Healing from Diogenes Syndrome isn't linear. It isn't clean. It's messy and slow. Sometimes it never fully happens. But Lyle began to bathe again. He started wearing clean clothes Ava brought him. He even let the sunlight back in, little by little. She helped him reconnect with his daughter through letters. And one day, he told her, "I didn't think anyone would ever knock again." Diogenes Syndrome is real. It affects more elderly people than we realize. It's often overlooked, mislabeled as laziness or madness. But behind the clutter is a person hurt, grieving, and often abandoned. These people aren't broken, they're buried. And all it takes to start uncovering them is someone who cares enough to stay. If you know someone who's withdrawn, who's let their world collapse inward, don't judge. Reach out. Ask their story. Because even under mountains of mess, there is always a heart waiting to be seen.